History is a puzzle. Pieces of our past have been carefully arranged, lost, forgotten, or some say deliberately hidden. From grand wars to cultural revolutions to world fairs celebrated during the 19th and early 20th centuries, one thing remains clear. The victors of history always have the power to sculpt the world's understanding of the past. But what if there's much more to the story than we've been told? What if the world we know, shaped by centuries of upheaval, destruction, and reconstruction, isn't just missing pieces, but has hidden them? Consider this. In cities across the planet, titanic buildings carved from limestone, marble, and granite stand as ancient reminders of human capability. Towering arches, columns with intricate carvings, and domes defying engineering limitations, all built centuries before modern machinery made such feats seem manageable. Yet even today, when cranes dominate skylines and cutting-edge tools guide construction, architects marvel at these enormous structures, admitting it would be almost impossible to build some of these marvels in such short spans of time. How did civilizations of the past do it? Why did so much of it get destroyed during wars? And why do the survivors of history remain surrounded by questions? Let's start with the wars that shaped nations, empires, and the early tides of globalization. Between the 18th and 20th centuries, from revolutions to world wars, vast regions across continents faced mass-scale destruction. Many casualties were unavoidable: soldiers, citizens, cities. But in the rubble of Industrial Revolution-era warfare, one peculiar trend stands out. Some of the most ornate, expansive buildings, cathedrals, palaces, libraries, burned to the ground for seemingly arbitrary reasons, leaving behind ruins that were often recycled into modern constructions or erased completely. Could it be a coincidence, or was there a method to this destruction? Imagine you're a victorious power looking to shape the narrative of the New World Order emerging from the ashes of war. You want people to believe in progress, your progress, a world where technology and science have triumphed over years of adversity. But then, lingering on street corners and city squares, you see those towering relics: marble-pillared halls, vast domes whose diameters rival modern stadiums, and abundant stone structures that hint at something entirely opposite of the primitive image you want to project onto history. Would these monumental reminders, standing in silent rebellion, fit within your new narrative? Would they fuel curiosity or spark inconvenient questions? The narrative of civilization, progressing from primitivity to sophistication, wouldn't hold up well if people saw obvious evidence suggesting an earlier, possibly advanced world, one capable of constructing these impossible marvels. And so, what if your choice as the victor is not just to build new monuments to power and influence, but to erase the past entirely? Of course, not all buildings vanished. Some remain to this day, often as government properties or institutions. The grand post offices, libraries, and museums that stand prominently across modern cities. And perhaps their survival isn't a coincidence either. What better way to keep stories controlled than to preserve what you can justify? Administrative hubs, collections of knowledge curated and limited, institutions repurposed into monuments to the victors themselves. But there are other questions here, unsettling ones. These monumental constructions weren't just buildings that served as architectural marvels. They had underground networks, stretching like veins below the surface, catacombs filled with skeletons, seemingly endless corridors of burial grounds underneath towering churches and cathedrals. Why are these subterranean spaces frequently closed off to the public? Why is their existence chalked up as simply tradition instead of being fully investigated? And why skeletons? Why so many skeletons, which seem to center almost exclusively beneath hubs of religious power? If we consider these catacombs alongside another peculiar historical quirk, a new pattern forms. After the wars of the 19th century, orphan trains became a phenomenon unlike anything people had seen. Entire trains packed with young, seemingly disconnected children went rushing across states, cities, and countries, distributed to families often without much record or clarity of origin. These orphans seemed to arrive abruptly on the historical timeline during moments of reconstruction. Who were they? Why were so many young people suddenly disconnected from their families? What catastrophic events created such mass orphanhood? It's hard to look at moments like this without asking uncomfortable questions about catastrophes lost to recorded history. Were these orphans remnants of disasters hidden from discussion today? Famines, deliberate purges, or other massive human redistributions caused by upheaval? And why do so many images of orphan trains bear striking resemblance to photos of visitors wandering through world fairs, confused, disconnected, almost searching for something bigger? Could the orphans we've been told about represent a lost world entirely? A generation disconnected from the old world, forced into the open with no stories of their own? We're told that the breathtaking structures seen in world fairs were temporary, as if they were too grand to exist permanently. Raffles, competitions, and fast-paced construction projects were repeatedly credited for their appearance. But how did those monuments rise so systematically, so flawlessly, in such short time spans, sometimes just years? Who funded the architecture, and in what world would temporary projects merit such expense? If these marvels were part of an extravagant past, and not merely moments of rapid construction, what does that mean for the victor's explanation about progress and ingenuity? It brings us back to an unsettling hypothesis. Could the narrative of modern history itself be one of careful arrangement, of restructuring civilizations after an unrecorded worldwide catastrophe? Could Psalm 83, which discusses an unfolding plan to erase the memory of nations, be describing more than religious prophecy? What if the New World Order isn't emerging today, but has been actively installing itself since the orphan trains and world fairs of the 1800s? Are we descendants of a different kind of primitive society, not one rising from hunter-gatherers, but one deliberately placed into simplicity after the erasure of a technological, sprawling civilization? Such speculation calls for examining the stories shoved into the margins: censorship of alternative historical accounts, destruction of physical evidence of advanced past cultures, and the tendency to reframe history through institutions of control. Why were some buildings kept, but most destroyed? Why were parts of the catacombs blocked? And most importantly, why did so many skeletal remains appear under cathedrals, with origins barely explained? Are fairy tales, the science fiction of the past, really science fiction at all? Or do they represent echoes of a way of life erased before we could question it? When movies like Divergent show dystopian systems of control using myths to manipulate populations, are they reflecting the complexity of modern life, or pulling directly from a world that existed before recorded history? What major catastrophic event warranted orphan trains across countless regions? Could those trains have carried children disconnected intentionally from their more advanced predecessors? The answers, it seems, hide in the shadows of history, scattered across fractured narratives, buried under demolished monuments, and suppressed by the victors who rewrite the stories. The world we think we know, modern, advanced, bound by technology, may not be progress at all. It may be the rising shadow of something far more primitive, fueled by the agenda of centuries-old powers intent on reshaping history from the very foundation. One thing is certain: the pieces missing from history aren't completely forgotten. They survive as whispers under the streets, in forgotten photographs, and in the impossible structures that still stand. All you have to do is look close enough.